segment here on Speak called Fair Play, where I turn the tables about and I allow my guest to ask me a question. I've enjoyed almost 40 years in the book, game, music, and film industry, and I'm the CFO of the nonprofit Blue Legacy that is completely dedicated to elevating, educating, and empowering artisans in all of those fields. So I can talk about the creative industry for hours without tiring. So, Marshall Miller is here with me today. He is the author of the Tasha Infestation series and also the Kim Kupar novels, which are absolutely fantastic. Marshall read for us from Jade Eyes, the first of the Kim Kupar novels, in our full interview on Speak, where I got to speak with Marshall. But today, Marshall is going to ask me a question. I don't know what the question is, but I will answer to the best of my ability. And as soon as we are done here, you guys should run on over to blueforgepress.com or amazon.com or walk into your favorite bookstore and pick up one of Marshall's books. I recommend Jade Eyes or Survivors, but hey, don't take my word for it. Marshall also has a hilarious, Marshall has a very good story in the hilarious Tales of the Slug anthology.
Yes.
Another great story in the anthology Cascadia. He also has ones in Unnerving 2. He has ones in Super and Unconditional. But Marshall, what is your question for me today?
Okay. As a traditional publisher, in addition to trying to tell us authors what we need to do to market our books, specifically, what do you do to market our books?
I think it's important for authors to realize that a good publisher does these things as a bare minimum. Immediately, when we print the first 1,000 books, because we print in small batches, we print 1,000. If the first 1,000 are sold out, we print 2,500. If those sell out, then we print 5,000, and it just keeps going like that. Okay, that's just our process. But in that first 1,000 print run, 400 of those are immediately sent to reviewers as part of care packages to bookstores, to regional buyers with press kits, to local and national media, and also to online book reviewers, like people who run book blogs and things like this. Now, some folks say you could cut that down to 100 copies or even 50 copies and work entirely within Amazon's established system. But here are the things that get in the way. And this is why, as a publisher, I am constantly saying to authors, here's the minimum you can do, because I already know I'm doing way beyond the minimum as a publisher. But the stumbling block, the hurdles that get thrown up in front of me are this. The first thing a regional buyer or a distributor does right now in this day and age is they Google you. And if they Google Marshall Miller, Jennifer DiMarco, any of our authors, and that author does not have a robust social media presence, they say, well, this person isn't going to be able to help us. They don't have any buzz about them. Distributors and chain stores don't create buzz. And I think that is what authors nowadays don't realize. They still want to be Mary Shelley. They still want to be Walt Whitman. They still want to just write. And what they don't remember is that Mary's works were rejected again and again and again and again. And Whitman was constantly paying for his own print runs. So I would say with any publisher, even if someone wants to have all the control in the world, they never want to work with an editor, they only want to self-publish. And I've said on other episodes of Speak this season, I wish I could make it mandatory for all authors to self-publish at least once. Not vanity publish, self-publish. Because then they would truly see what it's like to be on both sides of that desk. Because marketing is hard. But you know what the hardest part of it is? The rejection. And what authors of a publisher don't have to see is all of that rejection. Because it's not constructive. It's bad photocopied, faint photocopies of generic rejection slips that sometimes have a checklist, and the person sending it doesn't even bother to check a box. They're like, we don't review this. And I'm like, what do you mean? It's science fiction? You review science fiction? Yeah. So I would say when you are looking for a publisher, when someone is out there looking for a publisher, and you're trying to decide, should I self-publish or should I sign with X, Y, or Z publisher? If you want to keep writing actively, I feel like don't self-publish, because 90% of your time should then be on marketing if you're self-publishing. 10% writing. And in that 10%, we could break it down, and this percent of that, the editing, the revisions, but 90% of it would be marketing. Whereas with a publisher, the type of marketing that we ask our authors to do is so incredibly minimal compared to what is done for every single book. We work with PODs, which means print on demand services, if that's how we can get the books fastest into X, Y, and Z market. We work with traditional print runs, like I said, because we have to, where we'll get 1,000 copies, 2,500 copies, 5,000 copies at a time. Always escalating, always working up, because sometimes we need that. We'll do somewhere in between where, like we'll have the little pocket-sized books, little tidbit, a taster, a teaser, you might say, into a bigger series. I know David Martin, that we were just talking about, who was on Speak this season. He uses his little blue flash book as literally like a teaser. Here's a very inexpensive, he says sometimes he gives them out for free, a little taster of what my work is. That's some confidence in your own writing skills. So I think what you're doing at, for instance, at the barbecue place where you go, you'll spend a week selling books there. That is an excellent example of what a good publisher should ask an author to do. Don't just go to a bookstore, and I don't want to name names, but you mentioned that you had an author say to you, oh, I don't like going to like a barbecue place venue because people aren't coming there expecting to buy books. I want to go to a bookstore where they're expecting to buy books. And I'm like, yes, but only people planning to buy books are going to go to a bookstore.
Right.
You need to get books into the hands of people who weren't intending to buy a book that day.
Until somebody said something.
Because people actually walking into a bookstore, that number is going down. Now, book sales are still rising, but the number of people going into a bricks and mortar store is going down. So we have to say, well, where are people? Well, people are walking into a barbecue place. People are walking into a little corner cafe. These are places that if you can find that right venue where the owners or managers are open to creative content, it doesn't take sales away from them. Someone's still going to buy their coffee. They're still going to get their barbecue. But chances are, they'll also get a book on the way out.
There's that happy medium, I think. And that's one reason why I'm glad you guys picked me up, because you didn't have to.
But you see yourself as kind of in that happy medium. You like to do a lot.
Well, I like to get out and do things.
But you don't want to be doing all of the,
I'll tell you right now, I don't want to do covers. I don't want to do layout. I'm sorry. Brianne does these great, beautiful colors. I don't have the artistic ability.
And Brianne loves working with you in terms of the covers, because, this is like I say, in our Speak interview, this is epic sagas, science fiction.
Well, not only that, but like my little inhumanity thing. Well, that's too. This has a black dog on the front, and the story has a black dog in it, and that's what I'm saying. But the way they do the covers, and then the inhumanity, doesn't that look nice and bloody?
It does.
And I sold some of those during Halloween.
Yeah.
Okay, and that's why I wanted to get some of those.
Yeah.
But I don't want to do covers. We've got people, they spend all their time finding photos online for free, the public domain photos they can use on the front of their book, and I'm going, okay, fine, that looks pretty, but I don't want to spend time doing that.
Well, and I always argue, even a really beautiful, a breathtaking photograph, that's still not all that layout is. What font, what colors, And so I agree. Now, and again, some people love that.
Yeah. So
I say to them, go for it, self-publish. But I personally, as an author, I want to spend the majority of my time writing.
Well, I'm the same way. And most of the people that I know of, well, no, I'm not going to say most, because some of the people write fairly thick books, but they don't write a lot of them because they're self-publishing. Okay?
Sure.
Other people, the ones who say they wrote a lot of books, if you look how thick they are,
Right.
they're
yeah.
not very thick.
Yeah.
When I wrote my epic here, the Gathering Storm, the Tsunami, and the
Yeah.
Typhoon of Steel, that was all one novel.
Mm-hmm.
I wrote over 540,000 words.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
When I was talking to a major publisher,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, this is one of those publishers that started doing the subcontracting.
Right.
So I get this woman on the phone, and she's talking about this, and she says, well, we're not really taking any first-time authors, you know, other than through this quasi-vanity press thing. I says, okay. So she says, well, how long is your book?
Mm-hmm.
I says, 540,000 words.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, who the hell do you think you are, George R.R. Martin? And I said, yeah.
Yeah. Good answer.
Yeah. I said, well, why not?
Yeah.
I says, fine, I'll split it up into 3 volumes, but this whole idea of, you know, that you, I guess society likes to pigeonhole people, and I think that's one of the biggest problems. I always get in big arguments like, I remember when they published the book called Gravity's Rainbow.
Mm-hmm.
When that first came out, every single critic in the world said, this is the most confusing piece of crap I've ever read. Who wrote this? This isn't going to go anywhere. It's not like typical science fiction. It's not like typical fantasy. It's not like typical anything. Who the hell is this?
Yeah.
Thomas Pynchon? I can't remember Tom's last name. Pychon. Who the hell does he think he is?
Mm-hmm.
It took off because it hit that, I guess that it was weird enough that people liked to read it.
Yeah.
And when they wrote, oh God, was it William Burroughs, the guy that wrote they made a movie about it, wrote a book about some weird writer and stuff, you know, being a drug addict and having all these weird images and all this stuff. Once again, people are going, what the heck type of book is that?
Yeah.
And of course, Kurt Vonnegut, same thing. A lot of the stuff he wrote when he first came out with some of his books, you're going, well, that's not science fiction, that's just weird, you know?
Yeah.
But that's the thing, is I really think that's part of the problem with the whole artistic entertainment world is they pigeonhole things. And I think that's part of the problem, and that's, I would say, why a lot of people do self-publish, because they don't want to be pigeonholed.
Yeah.
But you gotta, like you said, you gotta be willing to put forth all that extra effort.
Yes.
I'm lazy, I don't want to do covers. I don't want to do layout.
And I also, I think you're absolutely right. Some people just don't like to be told what to do about anything.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of like, guess what, guys?
Yeah.
The world right now, and really, the world has always been run with pigeonholes.
Yeah.
And the reason is because humans are complex.
Yeah.
Okay, let's not even talk about, like we talked about in your speed interview, nasty little monkeys with primal urges that they barely ever say no to. But beside that, the humans are complex.
Oh, yeah.
And so we label and we categorize and we pigeonhole, negative or not. We do it to better understand and to be able to discover one another, our stories, etc. I always say to someone, what's your genre? And it is a huge red flag for me if an author cannot answer that. It's also a huge red flag for me when an author says, well, no story is truly new. And I'm like, you know what? I too took creative writing in high school. But you should know by now that there is archetypes and there are tropes, but you are new.
Yeah.
And you bring yourself and infuse your life experience into this story. And if I say to you, I feel like I've read this story before, there's nothing really new here, so I'm gonna pass.
Right.
And an author comes back and starts arguing with me, I'm like, honey, you've already lost this battle.
But I guess that brings up what we were discussing. Okay, fine, I wrote an alien invasion novel.
Yes.
But
right.
I purposely threw in all these other complications and different characters and stuff, so it wouldn't be the typical alien squid invasion novel.
Exactly.
And that's the difference, I think. If you look back in old the pulp fiction magazines, the original science fiction and fantasy magazines of the 40s and 50s.
Mm-hmm.
And you start, if you go back and read a lot of those stories,
Mm-hmm.
and even the 30s, all the way back to the 30s, you get a feel for, like you said, you have the stereotypical stories that people read just because they're all the same, and they like to read the same story over and over again
Sure.
with a few variations.
Mm-hmm.
But as things, I would say, got more quote-unquote sophisticated and complicated, then they started delving into more deeper subjects.
I think it's when the publishing world opened up and started accepting more
Yeah.
authors. You know, we didn't
Oh,
have
yeah.
the same 100 voices telling us
Exactly.
variations on their same 100
Well, and
things.
yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, then I'm a person that can't stand Dickens
Sure, sure.
because I was forced to read Great Expectations, and that.
Some people
I-
don't like Faulkner. Some people don't like
Yeah.
Hemingway. You know,
Yeah.
I said actually recently, and on Speak,
Yeah.
I said ultimately we have to find our own canonical writers.
Right.
We have to find who speaks to us, and I think that that's probably one of the most
Yeah.
important things a young reader, someone
Yeah.
who hopes to be a professional author one day, will do is find the works that are canonical to you.
What you
Find the great work that speaks to you.
what you like to read generally is what you want to write. Okay, Jade Eyes. In that book, I tried to present how a federal investigation happens.
Mm-hmm.
I explained the steps. I talk about wiretaps. I talk about search warrants.
Yeah.
I talk about surveillances.
Yeah.
Most people don't go in, especially TV, don't go into the nitty gritty
Yeah.
on that. They don't get into the details as to what really happens and just how time consuming that is, you know, that things don't happen in an hour and a half episode,
Yeah.
you know. And so at the same time, there are those people that write, quote unquote, they call them mysteries, but they're thrillers.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why I talked to you about this, and once you get the studios all set up and everything, I'm going to come in here and do a little video on, so you want to write a police thriller stories, and go through how to write a realistic story that's not going to drive all of us former cops and agents and stuff nuts when reading something going, that's not the way it happens. You know?
So if you want to encourage Marshall to
Yeah.
come on in and do this series, and you want to just hear him talk more about his life experiences and his work, check out the full Speak interview on this channel. You'll also find lots of other great Speak interviews and Fair Play episodes like this one. And thank you everyone today for watching.